Chapter 3 Big Sister 3 days later.
So, what did your parents want to see us for anyway?
Scootaloo asked her idol, sitting on said idol's back as she flew them both up to the floating city over their heads.
Heck if I know,
Rainbow Dash responded.
They didn't really say in their letter, only that it was urgent and that we should be there as soon as possible. You, don't think there's trouble, do you? Nah, I doubt it,
Rainbow Dash responded.
Honestly, it seemed more happy. How could you tell?
Rainbow chuckled.
Trust me, if you grew up around them, you can tell. They literally said they were happy in the letter, didn't they? Yes, they did. What did it say exactly? It's something like, and I quote,
Rainbow Dash cleared her throat as she prepared the best impression of her overly excited mother she could.
To our Rainbow Dash, the best Wonderbolt ever! Something had just happened and your father and I are really happy and excited about it. Please collect Scootaloo and come here right now, and I mean now, no delaying now. Wow, talk about being vague.
Scootaloo deadpanned.
Wonder what's got them so hyped up. Well, we'll find out soon enough.
Rainbow Dash muttered as she flew directly through the first cloud layer and into the city itself.
For better or worse. Or worse? Where my parents are involved, anything can happen.
Rainbow replied with a slight shudder.
You worry too much.
Scootaloo dismissed.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Rainbow agreed, though notably half-heartedly.
Hey, hold on tight, we're almost there.
Rainbow Dash sped up ever so slightly for the last leg of the flight, passing by several other Pegasi as they were going about their days amidst the city and the clouds. The Cyan Mare ducked and weaved through the larger buildings towards the center of Cloudsdale and began moving out to the quieter parts of the city. On the outskirts, away from the stadium and weather factories, there was much more open space, filled in only by the odd house here or there. It was out here that both the parents of Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash lived, respectively, and from their height, it didn't take long for Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo to spot the residence they had been searching for. Rainbow Dash stopped in the air for but a moment to adjust her vector of approach, and then promptly dived down towards it with a barrel roll that had been performed purely for Scootaloo's enjoyment. They slowed down to a crawl as they neared the cloud surface a short way away from the house, before Rainbow folded up her wings and gently landed on all fours.
We're here, Squirt,
Dash announced.
You getting off, or am I carrying you the whole way? I can walk just fine, thanks.
Scootaloo shot back, hopping off of Rainbow Dash's back.
We heading in?
Rainbow Dash nodded in response, proceeding to lead the way with Scootaloo falling into step behind her. They walked up into the front garden of the house and towards the front door. Rainbow paused for a moment before giving the front door a loud knock. It took a few moments, but a small commotion began inside, and the voices of Windy Whistles and Bo Hothuff could both be heard. A few moments later, the door opened, and the widely smiling face of Rainbow Dash's mother appeared in its stead.
Oh, my little Dashy!
Windy squeaked as she gave her daughter a big motherly hug.
I am so glad you could make it, and as fast as ever. Yeah, well, your letter sounded pretty urgent,
Rainbow said as she hugged her mother back before breaking it off.
What's got you so excited all of a sudden?
Windy giggled.
Oh, you'll see.
The mare then laid eyes on the young orange filly beside Rainbow Dash, and her smile widened just that ever little bit wider.
And Scootaloo,
Windy greeted cheerfully, patting the filly on the head.
I'm so glad you came along too. How have you been? Just fine, Mrs. Whistles,
Scootaloo replied.
Oh dear, you needn't call me that. It's just Windy, please. Oh, okay, Windy. See, isn't that better? There's no need for such formalities among us,
Windy Whistles stated.
Now come on, we have much to talk about.
Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo glanced at each other and then did as they were told. As they stepped into the hallway, Windy shut the door behind them and proceeded to stand expectantly by the entranceway into the living room.
So, where's Dad?
Rainbow Dash asked.
Oh, he's in there.
Wendy said as she motioned into the living room with her head.
With the surprise. Surprise?
Scootaloo inquired.
What surprise? Pinkie Pie didn't put you up to anything, did she?
Rainbow Dash asked with concern, looking over her shoulder, expecting to see the bubbly pink mare pop up out of the wall at any moment. Windy Whistles tilted her head.
Pinkie Pie? Isn't that one of your friends? I'll take that as a no, then. So what is your surprise?
Scootaloo asked in anticipation.
Why don't you both go in and have a look?
Windy said knowingly. Rainbow Dash then heard a noise coming from the living room that made her stand bolt upright, and her ears home in on the sound. She could have been mistaken, but she swore that she just heard the sound of a baby coming from that room. That morning, Little Wing gave a tiny little yawn as consciousness returned to her. Slowly, she blinked her eyes open and took note of her surroundings. It was her third time waking up in that crib, and she still found the experience rather surreal. She was still in the bedroom of their daughter, or that other daughter, as it stood now. It was a sizable room, with blue being very much the dominant color scheme. From the decorations around the room right down to the motivational poster of a tortoise, she had managed to piece together the personality of her supposed adoptive sister. She seemed competitive, at least as a child anyway. And thus far, she had only been referred to as Dashy in Little Wing's presence, although Little Wing guessed that was more of an abbreviation of Dash. However, it had yet to be seen if that was her first or surname. Little Wing sat up, examining the room a little more as she had been doing by routine those past few days. Those days had been spent exclusively within her new home, her parents doting over the little filly and making sure to stock up on all the supplies needed to effectively raise a small child. It was still taking some getting used to, though emergent infant instinct certainly made the transition easier than she'd expected. She still had yet to be given her own room, though from what she had overheard from Windy Whistles and Bo Hothoof, it suggested their house included a guest room that they intended to convert into her new bedroom. But that was all for another day. For now, her stomach was rumbling and she wished to be freed from her crib.
Blah!
Little Wing babbled out, the most she could seem to manage despite attempts otherwise.
Blah! Blah!
With her little wings fluttering, she got up onto her still wobbly legs and lifted her forelegs up so that they were planted on the edges of the crib, while she used her hind legs to steady herself on the small mattress.
Bah!
Little Wing shouted out again, though this time a small bang from the hallway beyond the door signified that she had gotten some pony's attention. The bedroom's door opened up, and Windy Whistles poked her head in, smiling on seeing Little Wing stood against the side of the crib.
Ah, good morning, dear.
Windy greeted happily as she trotted into the room, seeing Little Wing hold out her forehooves expectantly.
You want out of there, huh? All right, come on then.
Windy used her wings to scoop Little Wing up out of the crib and onto the mare's back. The filly made sure she was sat comfortably between the two wings, and then made some pleased baby babbles to signify her readiness. Windy smiled gleefully.
I am glad you're comfortable. Let's go get you fed and changed.
From there, it was on to the morning routine Little Wing had known since arriving at the home a few days previously. As Windy had stated, she was firstly fed and had her nappy changed. Bo Hothoof had taken a few days off from the weather factory where he worked due to Little Wing, and he spent half of his time with his wife and new daughter and the other half planning out how to convert the guest room into Little Wing's brand new abode. The rest of the morning had been spent with Windy Whistles assisting Little Wing in walking, of which the filly was making small progress and was now able to walk a whole 3 of 4 steps before landing flat on her face. Though, Windy had always been prepared to catch Little Wing as she fell and offer comforts if she ever hurt herself, even if Little Wing never felt like she needed it herself. Intermittently, they would take breaks from the walking lessons to play with some little toys that Little Wing's adoptive parents had provided her. Some were brand new, and others had apparently belonged to Dashy. She particularly enjoyed the Wonderbolt action figures that were pitted against a Hydra doll. She had at first thought that Wendy would find the epic battle as being inappropriate for the filly, but it quickly became obvious that their older daughter had done similar things with the toys when she had been Little Wing's age. Then, lunch finally came around and Bohatov had brought a high chair into the living room. There, they sat her down and provided her with a bottle of baby milk. Though Windy Whistle still fed her personally in the mornings and evenings, during lunch they provided her a bottle and would likely start phasing into that full time soon if Little Wing had to guess. How long exactly soon was, she didn't know, but she didn't particularly care either. She felt content, and for the first time in all her lives, she felt welcome. Then some pony knocked on the door. Little Wing put her bottle down, and her gaze followed Windy Whistle's curiously as she hurriedly exited the room. "Oh, I bet that's her now," Bohatov stated, causing Little Wing to tilt her head and wonder who he was talking about. She could hear the voice of her adoptive mother be joined by two new voices, both rather raspy, but one definitely sounded younger than the other. They certainly knew each other, and Windy Whistle sounded even more gleeful than usual, which was certainly a feat in and of itself. "What?" Little Wing called out questioningly, curious to see who their visitors were. There was silence for a few moments, and then the elder, raspy-voiced person spoke up again.
Mom, was that a foal I just heard? Oh, I guess the game is up,"
Windy stated as she cantered into the living room with two ponies following shortly behind. The ponies with her were both mares. One was definitely a child, the mark of a shield with a lightning bolt symbol on her flank, and an orange coat with dark purple mane and tail that matched her eyes. She seemed to be between 8 and 10 years old, if Little Wing had to hazard a guess. The other one, however, she could easily recognize from the pictures. The other was a cyan mare with a rainbow-colored mane. Her mark was the symbol of a rainbow lightning bolt striking from a cloud.
"Rainbow Dash,"
Windy Whistle spoke.
"Meet your new little sister, Little Wing."
Rainbow Dash and Little Wing's eyes met, and Rainbow's expression was extremely perplexed by the mere existence of the little filly. Little Wing wilted a little under the intense study, letting out a small, nervous squeak that made her parents' smiles become a little bit more worried.
Oh my gosh!
Scootaloo shouted out, not being nearly as out of it as Rainbow Dash.
Oh, she's so tiny!
Scootaloo rushed up to the high chair and propped herself against it to get a good look at the filly, who in question suddenly felt rather overwhelmed by it all.
"I didn't know you were pregnant. When was she born? Can she fly yet? Is she as awesome as any child of yours is bound to be?" Well,
Little Wing muttered shyly, and ultimately, she was unheard.
"I have a few questions of my own,"
Rainbow Dash stated, albeit less enthusiastically than the orange filly.
"For one, I know for a fact you are not pregnant." "Yes, that's right," Windy confirmed. "You see, she's adopted. It happened only about 3 days ago." 3 days?
Scootaloo blurted out.
"What happened?"
"We found her," Bo explained. "Abandoned, alone, and very scared. They wanted to throw her in some orphanage when we brought her in, so we decided to give the girl a proper home instead."
"Oh, who would do something like that?"
Scootaloo asked sadly.
"I mean, look at her. She's so tiny and cute."
Little Wing wilted back that little bit more as Scootaloo forgot the concept of personal space, but luckily Bohatov saw her discomfort and made his move. Scootaloo, could you give her a bit of space, please? I think you're overwhelming her." Scootaloo hopped back, a guilty look appearing on her face.
"Oh, sorry. It's all right, dear,"
Windy assured.
"You're just a new face, and all of this is already new to her as it is." "So, this is a permanent thing or something?"
Rainbow Dash asked.
"I mean, you could have at least told me you were planning to adopt a foal." "Well, us finding and adopting her kind of all happened within a few hours,"
Windy admitted.
"What? Dashy?"
Rainbow didn't know what to think.
"So what? You did it all on a whim? I know I'm not exactly renowned for thinking things through, but seriously?"
Rainbow's parents glanced at each other. "Dash, it was the right thing to do," Bohatov maintained.
Maybe, I don't know, but still.
Rainbow Dash sighed, trying to gather her thoughts.
This is kind of a big thing to just drop on me like that. I think I need some time to process this. Alright.
Windy said, sounding decidedly less happy than she had moments earlier.
Take all the time you need. Yeah, thanks.
Rainbow said, walking out of the room and then out of the house to get some air. Silence returned, and the remaining ponies in the room shifted uncomfortably. Little Wing's ears drooped. She had hoped she hadn't just become a wedge between family. She didn't think she could handle something like that.
Is she going to be alright?
Scoodle asked with obvious worry, looking at where Rainbow Dash had just exited. Just give her some time. She'll come around, Bohotov assured hopefully. Although maybe we should have broken the news a little slower. Windy Whistles then noticed how down her new daughter appeared to be, and thusly plastered a brand new smile on her face and planted herself next to Little Wing.
Don't worry, honey,
Windy cooed while planting a kiss on Little Wing's head.
As your father said, she'll come around and she is going to adore you.
They could only hope.